Germain was 38 years old, and by most metrics, he was a man of modest means. His declared salary was a steady $79,000 a year, a respectable figure for his work as a logistics consultant in Annapolis, Maryland. It was enough to afford the mortgage on their cozy two-bedroom cottage in West Annapolis, a 1,200-square-foot structure with sea-green shutters that he'd painted himself. It was enough to cover the payments on his reliable but unremarkable 2012 Toyota Camry, a car with 187,000 miles on the odometer, and a faint scent of coffee and hard work woven into its fabric seats. It was enough to live a life of quiet comfort, a life he had believed was a shared dream. But it was not enough, he was constantly reminded, for his wife, Solange. The devastating situation began, as it so often did, with her birthday. It was a subject that arrived each year wrapped in anxiety and expectation. This year, her 35th, was supposed to be different. She had told him, with a bright, dismissive wave of her hand, not to worry about it. "A few of the girls and I are just going to get away for the weekend," she'd said a month prior, her voice light and airy. "Just something simple. A little spa trip to St. Michael's. Don't you worry your head about planning a single thing." He had been relieved. Planning parties for Solange was like navigating a minefield of unspoken desires and expensive tastes. Her simple was never simple. Her little something always came with a four-figure price tag he was expected to produce, stretching their carefully managed budget to its breaking point. This year, her proactive planning felt like a gift. He'd kissed her, his heart swelling with a gratitude that now felt profoundly foolish. He loved her. He loved the way her deep brown skin seemed to hold the light, the curve of her smile when she was genuinely happy, a rarity he cherished. He loved the memory of the woman he'd married 5 years ago, a woman who seemed to want the same things he did, a partnership, a home, a future built hand in hand. So, while she was supposedly being pampered with cucumber water and facials, Germain had planned his own quiet surprise. He wasn't a man for grand, flashy gestures, but he was a man of deep, abiding affection. His plan was simple, rooted in the life they actually lived. He'd booked a table for two at their favorite small bistro for the following night, bought a modest but beautiful silver locket from a local artisan for $225, and arranged for his sister, Naima, to help him set up a small, welcome home celebration. The final piece was the most important. He was going to tell her his secret. The secret he had been nurturing for 3 long years, the source of his late nights, and the true destination of every spare dollar he had. He was going to tell her that his logistics consulting was a cover story. He was going to tell her that they were not just comfortable, they were successful. He was going to tell her that he was the sole owner and founder of Chesapeake Yacht Charter, LLC, a burgeoning enterprise that was finally, solidly in the black. He was going to lay the keys to a new life at her feet. He had no idea how terribly wrong he was. He had no idea that the foundation of their life was not built on the solid ground he imagined, but on a sinkhole of deceit, and he was moments away from plunging into it. The truth was waiting for him, gleaming white and obscene under the late afternoon sun, docked just a few miles from their little cottage with the sea-green shutters. Have you ever poured your entire soul into building a future for someone, only to discover they were building a different one without you? It's a special kind of devastation, one that rewrites every memory you thought you cherished. We'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever faced a betrayal that changed everything. Their life in the West Annapolis cottage was a carefully curated picture of domestic normalcy. Germain was the steady hand, the quiet architect of their stability. On Saturday mornings, while Solange slept in, he was the one tending to the small garden in their backyard, a patch of earth where he grew tomatoes and herbs. The garden was his sanctuary, a place of tangible growth. The cost was minimal, a few $dozen for seeds and soil, but the yield felt priceless. He would come inside, his hands smelling of dirt and basil, and make coffee in their $80 Cuisinart machine. He'd pack Solange's lunch for the week on Sundays, neatly portioning grilled chicken and quinoa into a set of $10 glass containers, an act of service she accepted as her due. His world was one of practicalities and quiet investments. His watch was an $89 Timex Expedition, its leather band worn soft with use. His work clothes were from Kohl's, purchased during a sale, rarely costing more than $40 for a button-down shirt. He managed their joint checking account with meticulous care, tracking every debit, ensuring the $3,200 monthly mortgage was paid on time, that their utility bills were covered, and that they were putting a meager but consistent $200 a month into a savings account. Solange lived in a different financial reality, one that constantly chafed against the boundaries of their shared one. Her world was one of desire, of things seen on Instagram and in the glossy pages of magazines that arrived at their house, addressed to her. "Jermaine, look at this," she'd say, pointing to a photo of a woman stepping out of a car. "It's a Burberry trench coat, just classic. It's an investment piece." An investment of $2,400 they did not have. He would smile, a tight, pained expression. "It's beautiful, baby, but you know things are tight right now." "Things are always tight, Jermaine," she would reply, the warmth draining from her voice. The sentence was not an observation. It was an accusation. It was the preamble to the inevitable comparison. Philip just bought his new girlfriend a Cartier bracelet for her birthday, just because. Philip, her ex-husband, the ghost at their feast. He was a partner at a downtown law firm, a man who moved through the world with the easy confidence that a seven-figure income provides. Solange had been married to him for 2 years before leaving him, a story she told with the air of a dramatic escape from a gilded cage. "He was all about appearances, Jermaine," she'd told him when they were dating. "Everything was about the money, the status. I wanted something real." Yet, Philip's name was a constant presence in their home. It was invoked whenever Solange felt the pinch of their budget. It was attached to stories of trips to Paris, of dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, of the white BMW 3 Series he had leased for her, a car that cost more per month than their entire grocery budget. The contrast was a weapon she wielded with casual cruelty. One evening, as he was changing the oil in his 2012 Camry, she came to the garage door, holding her phone. "Philip's in Aspen this week," she announced, a dreamy look on her face. "The snow looks amazing." He just nodded, wiping grease from his knuckles with a worn rag, the $30 cost of the oil change feeling suddenly heavy in his pocket. The biggest secret in Jermaine's life, bigger even than his business, was that he wasn't just a consultant. The late nights he spent in his small home office, surrounded by spreadsheets and maritime charts, weren't for some anonymous corporate client. They were for him. 3 years ago, after his father passed away and left him a modest inheritance of $95,000, he hadn't told Solange the full amount. He told her it was $20,000, which they'd used to pay off her lingering credit card debt. The remaining $75,000 became the seed money for Chesapeake Yacht Charter, LLC. He'd bought his first boat, a used but solid 38-foot Sea Ray, for $68,000 and spent the rest on licenses, insurance, and marketing. For 3 years, he had reinvested every single dollar of profit. He hired a small, fiercely loyal crew. He managed bookings through a discreet website. He kept his name off the public-facing materials, listing his trusted captain, Eva Rostova, as the primary contact. To Solange, his side hustle was a vague, unprofitable hobby. "Are you still messing around with that little boat thing?" she'd ask, her tone dripping with condescension. "I hope you're not sinking our money into it." "It pays for itself," he would lie, the words tasting like ash. In truth, the business was thriving. Last year, it had grossed over $400,000. This year, it was on track for more. He had recently acquired the crown jewel of his fleet, a stunning 62-foot yacht named the Constellation, purchased for $1.2 million through a carefully structured business loan. The vessel was already booked solid for the next 6 months, bringing in upwards of $8,000 per charter. His personal $79,000 salary was a fiction, a dam holding back a flood of wealth he planned to share with her. He was building something real, just like she said she wanted. He thought this sacrifice, this secret toil, was the ultimate act of love. He was proving he could give her the world, but on his own terms, through his own hard work. He just needed a little more time. The outrage began as a slow burn, a collection of small cuts that he had dismissed as paper thin. In hindsight, they were mortal wounds. The escalating betrayal wasn't a single act, but a campaign of 1,000 dismissals, a slow, steady erosion of respect that he had willfully ignored, blinded by love and hope. There was the incident with the anniversary dinner. For their 4th anniversary, he had saved for months to take her to a celebrated restaurant in the Inner Harbor, a place she had mentioned wanting to try. The bill came to $480, a significant stretch for him. He paid it with a smile, feeling proud. On the drive home, she was quiet. "What's wrong, baby?" he asked, reaching for her hand. She pulled it away. "It was nice, Jermaine." "It was? But it just feels like trying too hard." She sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "When Philip and I went to that same place, he knew the owner. We didn't even see a menu. They just brought us course after course. The sommelier knew his exact preferences." She looked out the window of his Camry. "It's just a different level, you know?" He felt the blood drain from his face. The $480 he had been so proud of suddenly felt like a handful of pennies. He said nothing, just gripped the steering wheel, the worn plastic cool beneath his tense fingers. The rest of the drive back to their little cottage was silent, the space between them thick with everything he couldn't afford. Then there were the lies, small ones at first. She'd come home with a new purse, a $450 Coach tote bag. "Where did that come from?" he'd asked, knowing their budget. "Oh, this old thing?" She'd laughed a little too quickly. "My mom gave it to me. It was just sitting in her closet." He later saw the charge on their joint credit card statement hidden amongst the groceries and gas fill-ups. When he gently confronted her, she flew into a rage. "My God, Jermaine, can I not have one nice thing? Do you have to track every single penny I spend? It's suffocating. I feel like I'm being audited, not married. Philip never, ever questioned what I bought." The argument ended as it always did, with him apologizing, feeling like a miserly tyrant for simply trying to keep their shared financial life afloat. He had made a critical mistake. He believed her anger was about the purse, about the money. He didn't understand that it was about her resentment of the life she was living with him. The planning for her girls' weekend was the masterpiece of her deception. She had woven a tapestry of believable details. She'd named the friends who were going Tiffany and Maria. She'd talked about the specific spa treatments they had booked. She'd even shown him the website for the inn in St. Michael's, a charming, rustic place that cost $350 a night. "We're splitting it 3 ways, so it's totally affordable," she'd assured him, patting his cheek. 2 weeks before the trip, he was in his home office, supposedly working on a consulting deck. In reality, he was reviewing the quarterly financials for Chesapeake Yacht Charter LLC. An email from Captain Eva caught his eye. The subject line was, "New high-value booking, the Constellation." He opened it. The charter was for the upcoming weekend, a private sunset cruise for 2. The fee was $8,500, paid in full, up front. The name on the booking made his breath catch in his throat. Philip Sterling. Germain felt a cold knot form in his stomach. It was a coincidence, he told himself. A sickening, bizarre coincidence. Philip was a wealthy man in a town full of water. Of course he would charter a yacht. It had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with Solange. But the seed of doubt was planted. The following evening, Solange was in the shower. Her phone, a new iPhone 14 that had cost $999 and been the source of another tense discussion, buzzed on the nightstand. He never looked at her phone. It was a line he didn't cross, but the knot in his stomach tightened into a fist of pure dread. He picked it up. The screen was lit with a notification, a text from a number not saved as a contact, but one he recognized from a past legal document she'd left on the counter. It was Philip. The message was short and devastating. Confirmed for Saturday. The constellation is all ours for the sunset. Can't wait to have you back in your element. Tell no one. Germain put the phone down, his hand trembling. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. The constellation, his boat, the crown jewel of his secret empire. Tell no one. Her girls' weekend in St. Michael's, the lies about Tiffany and Maria, the spa, the rustic inn. It was all an elaborate fiction, a cover for a secret rendezvous with her ex-husband on a yacht that he, her hard-working, budget-conscious husband, unknowingly owned. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a profound and absolute mockery of his entire existence. She wasn't just cheating on him. She was using the very fruits of his secret labor, the symbols of the better life he was building for them, as the stage for her betrayal. He felt a strange and terrible calm descend over him. The hurt was so immense it transcended anger, crystallizing into something cold, hard, and clear. He finally saw her. Not the woman he loved, but the woman who had been standing in front of him all along, laughing at him in plain sight. He had thought he was building her a palace, but he was only financing the renovations on a life she planned to live with someone else. The rage was there, a white-hot core deep inside him, but on the surface he became perfectly still. He would not confront her, not yet. He would let her walk straight into the trap she had set for herself. He would let her believe her lies, right up until the very last second. What she didn't know was that the weekend wasn't just her birthday. It was the end of her life, as she knew it. The sun was beginning its slow descent over Annapolis, painting the sky in strokes of orange and violet. The air at City Dock was thick with the smell of low tide, diesel fuel, and the fried dough from a nearby vendor. It was 5:47 p.m. on Saturday, October 15th. Germain stood near the edge of the parking lot, his sister Naima by his side. He held the small, square box containing the $225 silver locket in his jacket pocket, its weight a dense, ironic counterpoint to the hollowness in his chest. "You seem quiet, Germain," Naima said, her voice gentle. Her long braids, threaded with subtle silver beads that clicked softly when she moved, framed a face filled with concern. "You sure this is a good idea? Just showing up? Solange can be particular about her surprises." "I'm sure," he said, his voice flat. "I just want to see her. Welcome her back." The lie felt smooth, practiced. He had been practicing it for 2 weeks. They walked toward the docks, past families eating ice cream and couples holding hands. Germain's eyes scanned the forest of masts and polished hulls. And then he saw it. Docked at Slip 7, the premier spot reserved for the largest and most luxurious vessels. The Constellation. She was magnificent. A 62-foot marquee, her white fiberglass hull gleaming as if lit from within. Her polished chrome fixtures caught the dying sunlight like scattered diamonds. Even from a distance he could see the teak decking, the plush outdoor seating, the bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket on the aft deck table. He knew every inch of this vessel. He had spent 2 full days with the surveyor before finalizing the $1.2 million purchase. He knew the hum of her twin Volvo engines, the precise layout of her 3 staterooms, the exact cost of the Italian leather upholstery on her salon sofas, which was a staggering $22,000. This boat was his pride, his ambition made manifest, and it was the scene of the crime. As they got closer, he saw them. They were standing on the aft deck, bathed in the golden hour light. Philip Sterling was leaning against the railing, a portrait of casual wealth. He wore a crisp navy blue polo shirt, white linen trousers, and a Patek Philippe watch that likely cost more than Germain's Toyota. He was laughing, a broad, confident smile on his face. And then there was Solange. She was radiant. She wore a flowing white sundress that probably cost $600, her luminous, deep brown skin glowing against the fabric. Her hair was done up in an elegant twist, and she was wearing diamond earrings Germain had never seen before. She was looking up at Philip, her face alight with a kind of uninhibited joy he hadn't seen directed at him in years. She tilted her head back and laughed, a full-throated sound of pure delight. In that moment, she was not the woman who lived in a small cottage and complained about a budget. She was the woman who belonged on a yacht, draped in diamonds, laughing with a man who could give her all of it without a second thought. Germain stopped walking. Naima followed his gaze, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. "Germain? Is that?" He didn't answer. He just watched. He watched as Philip reached out and brushed a stray curl from Solange's face. He watched as she leaned into the touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a fraction of a second. The scene was so intimate, so comfortable. It was like watching a husband and wife who had been married for 20 years. And then Solange's eyes opened. They drifted past Philip's shoulder, across the 50 feet of water and wood, separating the yacht from the dock, and they landed on Germain. The transformation was instantaneous and brutal. The radiant joy on her face didn't just fade, it shattered. Her smile froze, then collapsed. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her glowing skin looking ashen. Her eyes widened in pure, unadulterated horror. Her body went rigid. Her hand, which had been resting on Philip's arm, recoiled as if she had touched a hot stove. It was the face of a person who had seen a ghost. Worse, it was the face of a person who had been caught, utterly and completely caught. Philip, noticing the change, turned. His smile faltered as he saw Germain and Naima standing there. Confusion flickered across his features, followed by a flicker of annoyance. But Germain's eyes were locked on his wife. He saw everything in that one, silent moment. The depth of the lie. The contempt she held for him. The life she truly wanted and the man she wanted it with. The whole, ugly, heartbreaking truth. He felt the cold, hard clarity from 2 weeks ago settle over him again. Not as a feeling, but as a physical presence. It was a shield. He took a slow breath, the salty air doing nothing to clear the bitter taste in his mouth. He looked at Naima, whose face was a mask of disbelief and fury. He gave her a single, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Not now. Then he started walking again, his steps even and deliberate. He walked down the ramp toward Slip 7, toward his yacht, toward his wife and her lover. He was no longer the unsuspecting husband. He was the owner, coming to inspect his property. The few seconds it took to walk from the edge of the dock to the gangplank of the Constellation felt like an eternity. For Germain, this was the heart of the playing dumb phase, a performance of normalcy, while his world was being torn apart. Every step was a lie. His calm expression was a lie. The relaxed set of his shoulders was a lie. He could feel Naima's shocked, furious energy vibrating beside him, but he walked as if he were simply approaching a friend's boat, a casual visitor dropping by. He saw Solange's panic escalate with each approaching step. Her mind was clearly racing, trying to formulate a story, any story, that could explain the impossible scene. He could almost hear the gears grinding in her head. What is he doing here? How did he know? This can't be happening. Her eyes darted from Germaine to Philip and back again, her breath coming in short, shallow puffs. Philip, on the other hand, had recovered from his initial surprise. His expression had settled into one of smug arrogance, tinged with irritation. He saw not a threat, but an inconvenience. He saw the budget-conscious husband, the man who drove a 10-year-old Camry, showing up to spoil his expensive romantic evening. He stepped forward slightly, subtly positioning himself in front of Solange, a proprietary gesture that sent a fresh wave of cold fury through Germaine. As Germaine reached the base of the gangplank, a crew member, a young man named Ben, whom Germaine had hired 3 months ago, moved to intercept them. "Excuse me, sir, this is a private charter." Before Germaine could speak, Philip's voice boomed from the deck. "It's all right, Ben, let him on. Apparently, we have some uninvited guests." His tone was laced with condescension, the voice of a man used to being in charge, a man swatting away a fly. Germaine ignored him completely. He held up a hand to Ben, his eyes calm and steady. "It's okay, Ben. I need to speak with the captain." He stepped onto the gangplank, the slight sway of the boat under his feet a familiar sensation. He felt nothing. The pain, the rage, the heartbreak. It was all there, but it was packed away, sealed in a box of ice. In its place was a profound, almost serene sense of purpose. He was an owner about to liquidate a failed asset, his marriage. He reached the deck. The air was thick with tension. Solange stood frozen, her face a mess of terror and shame. Philip crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. He was ready for a confrontation, anticipating a scene, perhaps some yelling from the cuckolded husband that he could coolly put down. He was expecting emotion. He was about to be deeply disappointed. Germaine's gaze swept past them both, as if they were nothing more than decorative statues. He saw Captain Eva Rostova emerge from the helm, her professional smile already in place. Eva was a woman in her 50s with sharp blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She was the best captain on the Chesapeake Bay, and the first person he had hired. She was fiercely loyal to the company, but she did not know him as the owner's husband. To her, he was just a man who had boarded her charter. "Good evening," she said, her voice crisp. "I'm Captain Rostova. Can I help you? This is a private excursion." "Ava," Germaine said, his voice quiet, but carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of confusion. She knew his name from payroll, from their business calls, but they had never met in this context. Philip stepped forward. "Captain, I rented this yacht for the evening for $8,500. These people are not my guests. I'd like you to remove them from my boat." He said, "My boat," with a sense of ownership that was almost comical. Solange finally found her voice, a choked, desperate whisper. "Germaine? What are you doing here? I can explain." Germaine didn't even look at her. His entire focus was on Captain Eva, who was now looking from Philip's arrogant face to Germaine's unnervingly calm one. She sensed something was wrong, that this was not a simple domestic dispute. The power dynamic was off. This was the moment. The culmination of 3 years of secret work, of 1,000 small humiliations, of 2 weeks of cold, calculated waiting. He had imagined this moment, played it over and over in his mind. He had thought it would feel triumphant. Instead, it felt like signing a death certificate, necessary, final, cold. He looked directly into Captain Eva's eyes. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He let the silence stretch for one more beat, letting the weight of the moment settle on everyone. Then he said the three words, "I'm the owner." The three words hung in the air, simple, quiet, and utterly devastating. They landed with the force of a physical blow. For a moment, nothing happened. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the hull and the distant cry of a gull. Then, the world reconfigured itself around those three words. Captain Eva Rostova's reaction was immediate and telling. The professional mask dropped, replaced by a flash of stunned comprehension, followed instantly by unwavering loyalty. Her sharp eyes widened for a fraction of a second as the pieces clicked into place, the name on the ownership papers, the voice on the phone, the man standing before her. She straightened her shoulders, her entire demeanor shifting from charter captain to subordinate officer reporting to her commander. "Sir," she said, her voice stripped of its earlier pleasantries, now crisp and respectful. "My apologies. I didn't recognize you." She cast a brief, withering glance at Philip, who was still processing the statement. Philip scoffed, a short, ugly sound of disbelief. "You're the what? The owner? Don't be ridiculous." He turned to Ava. "Captain, I'm paying you a lot of money. Get this lunatic off my vessel." Germain didn't even grant him a look. His eyes remained fixed on Ava. "Captain," he said, his voice still low and controlled, "your orders are to terminate this charter immediately. Take us back to the dock." "Yes, sir," Eva said without hesitation. She turned on her heel. "Ben, Michael, prepare to cast off. We're returning to port." The crew, who had been watching the drama unfold with wide eyes, snapped into action. The sound of ropes being uncoiled and the sudden, deeper thrum of the Volvo engine starting up was the sound of Germain's authority taking hold. It was then that reality finally crashed down on Philip. His face, which had been a mask of smug arrogance, cycled through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, then indignation, then pure, sputtering rage. "What the hell is going on? I paid for this. This is my evening. You can't just—" "I can," Germain said, finally turning to look at him. His gaze was cold and empty. "And I am. This is my company, Chesapeake Yacht Charter, LLC. This is my boat, the Constellation, asset number 001 in my fleet. You paid for a service. As the owner, I am revoking that service." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You will receive a full refund of your $8,500 charter fee within 3 business days. Now please be quiet. My captain has work to do." Every detail, the LLC name, the asset number, the exact refund amount, was delivered with the dispassionate precision of an auditor. It wasn't an argument. It was a statement of fact, and it completely dismantled Philip's entire sense of control. He was a man who used money as a weapon and a shield. Suddenly, his money was worthless. He was on a $1.2 million yacht, and the man he had dismissed as a broke, nobody owned it all. Solange, who had been paralyzed, finally broke. "Germain, please," she cried, stepping forward, her hands outstretched. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Please, don't do this. We can talk about this. It's not what it looks like." "It is exactly what it looks like," Germain said, his voice devoid of any warmth. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and felt a vast, empty space where his love for her used to be. He saw the expensive dress, the new diamond earrings, gifts from Philip, no doubt, and he felt nothing but a distant pity. "You are on a private cruise with your ex-husband, on your birthday. After telling me you were in St. Michael's with your friends, there is nothing to talk about." "He's just a friend, Germain. An old friend," she sobbed, her desperation escalating as the boat began to move. the gap between the yacht and the dock widening. "He wanted to do something nice for my birthday. That's all." Naima, who had been standing silently by the railing, finally spoke. Her voice was low and shaking with fury. "A friend? Solange, I have watched my brother work himself to the bone for you. I have watched him count every dollar to give you a good life while you complained that it wasn't good enough. And you do this? On his boat? You are shameless." The yacht was now turning, its powerful engines pushing it away from the open water of the Severn River and back toward the unforgiving lights of City Dock. The beautiful sunset, the one meant for her and Philip, was now behind them. Philip, red-faced and humiliated, made one last attempt to assert himself. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Breach of contract. You have no idea who you're messing with." Germain almost smiled. It was a cold, mirthless expression. "I think I do," he said softly. He pulled his phone from his pocket, a simple Samsung that cost him $300 2 years ago. He found the number he needed. He didn't have to look at Philip. "Mr. Sterling, you're a partner at Sterling, Albright and Finch, correct?" "I know Mr. Albright. We're in the same boating club." I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear about how one of his senior partners conducts himself on a private charter, especially one that ends so publicly. The threat was veiled, but surgically precise. Philip's face went white. The story of him being kicked off a yacht by his girlfriend's husband, the husband he thought was a broke joke, would be catastrophic for his image. The carefully constructed facade of power and control he projected. He was silenced, utterly defeated. The short ride back to the dock was the longest 10 minutes of Solange's life. She alternated between pleading with Germain, who stared out at the water and refused to look at her, and shooting venomous looks at Philip, as if it were all his fault. The beautiful evening had devolved into a cramped, floating prison cell of shame. As the boat nudged gently against the dock, Germain turned to Eva. "Thank you, Captain. Secure the boat. I'll be in touch on Monday." "Yes, sir," she said, her eyes filled with a deep, quiet respect. Germain turned and walked toward the gangplank. Naima was right behind him. He didn't look back. "Germain, wait!" Solange wailed from the deck. "Where are you going? What are we going to do?" He stopped at the top of the gangplank but didn't turn around. He spoke to the darkening sky, to the water, to the past 5 years of his life. "There is no we," he said. His voice was calm, final. "I'll have my lawyer send your things to your mother's house. Don't come back to the cottage." Then he walked down the gangplank and didn't stop until he and Naima were back in the parking lot, leaving the gleaming white yacht and the wreckage of his marriage behind him. Monday morning arrived with a cold, gray drizzle that matched the mood in Germain's heart. The emotional storm had passed, leaving behind the grim, quiet work of cleaning up the debris. At 9:15 a.m., he walked into the offices of Okoro and Associates, a boutique law firm located in a discreet brick building in downtown Annapolis. The firm specialized in high-asset divorce, and Ms. Adana Okoro came highly recommended. She was known for being sharp, strategic, and utterly unflappable. Her services came at a cost, a $10,000 retainer, and a billing rate of $750 per hour. It was a price Germain was more than willing to pay. He was ushered into a corner office with a sweeping view of the state capitol building. The room was decorated in shades of cream and navy blue, with modern art on the walls. It was a space that projected competence and expensive success. Ms. Okoro stood to greet him. She was a tall, elegant black woman in her late 40s, her hair styled in immaculate twists. She wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. Her handshake was firm, her eyes intelligent and direct. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice warm, but all business. "Thank you for coming in. Your sister Naima gave me a brief overview, Please tell me everything from the beginning." For the next hour, Germain laid it all out. He didn't editorialize or get emotional. He spoke with the same dispassionate clarity he had used on the yacht. He presented the facts as if he were delivering a report to a board of directors. He started with the founding of Chesapeake Yacht Charter LLC 3 years prior, using his premarital inheritance of $75,000. He produced the original incorporation documents, clearly dated 1.5 years before his wedding to Solange. "The LLC is solely in my name," he explained, pushing a thick binder across the polished mahogany desk. "My wife has never been an employee, a partner, or a listed officer. Her name appears nowhere on any of the corporate filings." Ms. Okoro nodded, her pen gliding across a legal pad. "Excellent. In Maryland, assets acquired before the marriage are generally considered non-marital property. We will argue forcefully that the entire LLC and all its assets are yours alone." Germain then opened a second binder. This one contained the complete financial records of the company. He had printed everything: profit and loss statements, balance sheets, asset registers. "This is the current asset list," he said, turning to a specific page. "Asset 001, the 2021 Marquise M62, the Constellation. Purchase price, $1.2 million. Current estimated market value, approximately $1.1 million. Asset 002, a 2018 Sea Ray, Sundancer 460, the Severn Queen. Purchase price, $450,000. Asset 003, a 2019 Boston Whaler, 330, Outrage, the Bay Runner. Purchase price, $310,000. He continued down the list, detailing maintenance equipment, mooring leases, and office hardware. The total value of the company's assets was just north of $1.9 million, with a single business loan of $800,000 against the Constellation. "The company grossed $412,000 last year," Germain continued. "Net profit after all expenses, salaries, and reinvestments was $128,000. My official salary, which I draw and deposit into our joint account, is $79,000. The rest has been retained as earnings within the company for expansion." Ms. Okoro looked up from her notes, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "You've been very disciplined, Mr. Vance. You've built a firewall between your personal finances and your business. This makes our job much cleaner." Finally, he detailed the events of Saturday evening. He described the lie about the girls' weekend, the text message he saw, and the scene on the dock. He handed over a printed statement from his sister, Naima, a corroborating witness to the public event. "Adultery is a grounds for divorce in Maryland," Ms. Okoro stated, "and while it may not drastically change the financial outcome regarding premarital assets, it certainly demolishes any claim she might try to make for alimony based on need or lifestyle. She has, through her actions, forfeited her right to spousal support. She laid out the strategic plan. Step 1. File for an absolute divorce immediately, citing adultery. Step 2. Simultaneously file a motion to prevent Solange from accessing the West Annapolis cottage, which, while purchased during the marriage, was paid for primarily by funds Germain could trace back to his premarital business income. Step 3. Offer a swift, clean settlement. We will offer her half the equity in the house, which is approximately $45,000, Ms. Okoro said, her voice precise. We will offer her half the value of the joint savings account, which is $3,800, and we will offer her the Toyota Camry. She can keep her personal belongings and any gifts you gave her. In exchange, she signs a full waiver of any and all claims to the LLC, now and in the future, and waives any right to alimony. It is a more than fair offer under the circumstances. If she refuses, we proceed to discovery and trial, where her actions will be laid bare in a public court. I do not believe she will want that. Germain felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was a clear path forward. It was business, cold, clean, and final. And Philip Sterling? He asked. A gift, Ms. Okoro said, with a thin smile. His presence confirms the adultery, and his public humiliation ensures he will not want to be dragged into a messy court battle as a witness. He will pressure her to take the deal and disappear quietly. You've already won, Mr. Vance. Now it's just a matter of paperwork. He left her office an hour later, after signing the retainer agreement and the initial divorce filings. The $10,000 fee was deducted from his business account. As he stepped out into the persistent drizzle, he didn't feel happy. He didn't feel sad. He felt empty, but it was a clean, quiet emptiness. The space was now cleared. He had a strategic plan. It was time to rebuild. If you've ever had to make a tough decision to protect your peace and your future, let us know how you found the strength to do it. Your story could inspire someone else in our community. The consequences of that single, three-word sentence cascaded through their lives with the brutal efficiency of a controlled demolition. The fallout was not loud or explosive, but a series of quiet, devastating implosions. For Solange, the collapse was total. The divorce papers arrived via a courier to her mother's house 2 days after the incident on the yacht. The legal language was cold and impenetrable, but the message was clear. Her marriage was over. The life she had curated was gone. Ms. Okoro's prediction was correct. Faced with the prospect of having her affair with Philip detailed in open court, Solange instructed her cut-rate lawyer to accept the settlement immediately. She received a check for $48,800, her share of the house equity and savings. The 2012 Toyota Camry, the car she had so often derided, was now her only mode of transport. The cottage in West Annapolis, with its sea-green shutters and the garden Germaine tended, was a memory. She was forced to rent a generic one-bedroom apartment in a sprawling complex in Glen Burnie for $1,850 a month, a place with beige walls and a view of a parking lot. Her social life evaporated. The friends who had known about Philip, who had perhaps even encouraged the affair, now treated her like a pariah. The story had spread like wildfire through their circle, but it wasn't the story of a woman finding romance. It was the story of a woman who had been spectacularly and publicly shut down by the quiet, unassuming husband she had underestimated. She was no longer an object of envy. She was a cautionary tale. The diamond earrings from Philip were returned in a small velvet box. He wanted nothing more to do with her. Stripped of Germaine's stability and Philip's glamour, she was just a woman in a beige apartment, her expensive tastes now a cruel joke in the face of her new reality. She found a job working as a cashier at a high-end department store, the very kind of place she used to shop, earning $19 an hour and offering other women the dream she had lost. For Philip Sterling, the consequences were less financial and more reputational, which for a man like him was almost worse. Germaine's veiled threat had been more than effective. The story of the aborted yacht party became a piece of Annapolis gossip, a little anecdote told with a smirk at cocktail parties and on the golf course. He wasn't ruined, but he was diminished. He was the man who had tried to steal another man's wife on the man's own yacht and had been sent home like a naughty schoolboy. It made him look foolish, and in his world, foolishness was a fatal flaw. A potential major client, hearing the story from a mutual acquaintance, decided to go with another firm, a loss of an estimated $200,000 in annual billing for Sterling, Albright, and Finch. Mr. Albright had a very pointed, closed-door conversation with Philip about discretion and the firm's image. The humiliation stung far more than any financial penalty. For Captain Eva Rostova and her crew, the consequences were entirely positive. The following week, Germaine called a meeting. He formally introduced himself as the owner and laid out his vision for the company's expansion. He thanked them for their professionalism and loyalty during the incident. Then he gave Captain Eva a discretionary bonus of $15,000. He gave Ben and the other crew member, Michael, bonuses of $5,000 each. It was a powerful statement. Loyalty to the company to him, would be rewarded. Their morale and their respect for the quiet man who had been signing their paychecks all along soared. For Germain, the consequence was, paradoxically, freedom. The final divorce decree arrived 6 months later. The cottage was his, the business was his, the future was his. The absence of Solange's constant low-grade disappointment and her endless desires was like the cessation of a chronic headache he didn't realize he had until it was gone. His finances, no longer siphoned off to fund a lifestyle they couldn't sustain, flourished. The money he had spent on her expensive dinners, her clothes, her unspoken demands, was now funneled directly back into Chesapeake Yacht Charter, LLC. The gaping hole in his heart was still there, but it was clean now, not filled with the poison of deceit. He began the slow, quiet work of healing. He had lost a wife, but he had regained himself. The cost had been immense, but the return on investment was proving to be immeasurable. 2 years passed. The sharp edges of the betrayal had softened, worn down by the steady rhythm of work and the changing of the seasons on the Chesapeake. The gray drizzle of that fateful Monday had long since given way to the brilliant, hopeful sunlight of a new chapter. Germain stood at the helm of a small, 28-foot sailboat, the Resilient. He had bought her a year ago for $45,000, not as a business asset, but as a personal indulgence. She was old but sturdy, with a teak-trimmed cabin and sails the color of bone. She was his church, his therapy, his quiet place. It was a perfect Sunday afternoon in late September, and the Severn River was calm, the water a deep, shimmering blue. Chesapeake Yacht Charter, LLC had grown beyond his initial projections. He had used the retained earnings to acquire 2 more vessels, a sleek powerboat for smaller, faster excursions, and another mid-size yacht to meet the booming demand. His fleet of 5 was the most respected in Annapolis. He now employed a full-time staff of 12, including an office manager who handled the bookings, freeing him up to focus on strategy and, on days like this, to simply sail. He had drawn a larger salary, a comfortable $180,000 a year, but his lifestyle had barely changed. He still lived in the West Annapolis cottage with the sea-green shutters. He still drove a Toyota, though he'd upgraded to a certified pre-owned RAV4. The $89 Timex was still on his wrist. The trappings of wealth held no allure for him. True wealth, he had learned, was not about what you could buy, but what you could build. It was about integrity. It was about a quiet mind. Naima sat across from him in the cockpit, sipping a bottle of water. Her presence had been a constant, steady anchor in the storm. "You seem happy, Germain," she said, her voice carrying over the gentle flap of the sail. He looked out at the shoreline, at the grand houses set back from the water. He used to look at them with a pang of inadequacy, a feeling stoked by Solange's endless comparisons. Now he felt nothing but a calm detachment. They were just houses. "I am," he said, and the simple truth of the words filled him with a sense of peace. "I'm content. The business is good. Life is simple." "Have you heard from her?" Naima asked softly. It was the first time she had mentioned Solange in over a year. Germain shook his head. "No. I heard through the grapevine she moved to Northern Virginia a while back, working some retail management job. I hope she's okay. I truly do." And he meant it. The anger had long since faded, leaving behind only a scar and a lesson. Forgiveness, he had discovered, was not for her benefit. It was for his. It was about setting down a heavy burden that he no longer needed to carry. He thought back to the man he was 2 years ago, the man so desperate for a woman's approval that he had hidden his own success, the man who had measured his worth by her happiness. He barely recognized him. The crisis had stripped him down to his foundations, and in the rebuilding, he had constructed someone stronger, someone more authentic. The real product he was building was never just a yacht charter company. It was a life of his own design, built on his own values. The outer layer, the shiny boats, and the healthy profit margins was what the world saw. But the inner engine, the thing that truly drove him, was the quiet satisfaction of self-reliance, the deep, abiding peace that comes from being the captain of your own soul. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a familiar golden glow across the water, he felt a sense of profound gratitude. He had been betrayed, yes. He had suffered a humiliation that could have broken him. But in the end, the experience had not destroyed him. It had revealed him. It had forced him to see that the love he was so desperately trying to earn was a pale imitation of the self-respect he had possessed all along. True wealth isn't about the yacht you can rent for an evening. It's about having the strength to own your life, to steer your own course, even when it means turning the boat around and heading back to shore alone. It's about building something that will last, not for show, but for the quiet, unshakable peace it brings to your own heart. What do you think is the most important foundation for a happy life? Is it wealth, love, or self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Love Beyond Pride, where every story is a journey to a stronger self.